Boris Johnson, you'll have heard today, committed to honour what he called the letter and spirit of the Good Friday Agreement. So presumably that should put your faith in him.
Well, no, it doesn't really, for two reasons. One, because I think he's just made it a whole lot harder to get the institutions up and running again, because by having this ghost of Brexit hanging over the talks that were making some progress towards getting Stormont back up and running, we can guarantee we won't get to a solution before Brexit, unfortunately. So it's going to actually get worse. By also turning up and appearing to be on one side of the debate, it creates another problem as well for those negotiations.
When you say appearing to be on one side, he's insisted that he can remain impartial in the negotiation of power sharing, bring them together. Do you think that is disingenuous?
It is disingenuous. I don't think it's possible. You remember in 1991, it was a Conservative government that said we had no selfish strategic or economic interest in Northern Ireland. We were impartial. We could live with any solution that the parties in Northern Ireland could live with. But what Boris Johnson has done by going to their party conference last time he was in Northern Ireland, by having dinner with the leader of the DUP, by depending on the DUP to stay in power, he's shown clearly that he's on one side. And if he's on one side, he can't be that impartial arbiter between the different parties.
I was quite struck by how phlegmatic Roger Swan from the UUP was just now. He still thinks that it is possible to find solutions, that there is the goodwill. Clearly, the money is being thrown at this problem, and that they will come up with something, that there will be a shift, that Europe will move towards them.
Well, the first problem we got is that Boris Johnson has introduced a precondition. He said he won't talk to the Irish and he won't talk to the EU until they accept that they're going to give up the backstop. That kind of precondition never works. He'll either have to climb down from that and say he'll talk to them anyway, or there's going to be no negotiation. And if there's no negotiation, that's because he doesn't actually want to find a solution and wants to have a hard Brexit without an agreement.
You say never, but they haven't been in the situation where they're quite so close to the precipice, have they?
Well, he's clearly trying to frighten them into a negotiation, but I don't think that's going to work, because there is no alternative that anyone has so far managed to come up with to the backstop. In fact, we will have to go, if Boris Johnson succeeds in taking us to a Canada free trade agreement, we'll have to actually go back to the original backstop. And the original backstop had Northern Ireland remaining in the single market and the customs union alone within the United Kingdom. So there'll have to be a border down the Irish Sea in those circumstances.
But they've all said that they won't put a hard border. And yet, maybe you can break this down for me. As soon as people discuss the lack of a backstop, it gets so quickly into rhetoric about guns and bombs. Why? Why, particularly with Remainers, why does it go straight to violence, that sort of nuclear button?
Well, firstly, there's a reason that Theresa May said it doesn't matter who builds the hard border, it matters that there will be one. So it doesn't matter if it's the British government saying it won't build one, there'll have to be one, because if we have a different customs policy in Northern Ireland, we have a different regulatory policy, there has to be a border. That's why countries have borders. So someone's going to have to build a border. And the problem here is that the root of the Good Friday Agreement was dealing with the issue of identity in Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, we have people who feel Irish, we have people who feel British. And the solution that we found was that identity no longer mattered because we had an open border, since both the Republic of Ireland and the United Kingdom joined the EU. So that border made it possible for people to have either of those identities. As soon as you put a hard border back in again, you reopen that issue of identity, you undermine the basis of the Good Friday Agreement.
But this whole question of identity is thrown up by the checkpoints, the currency borders that already exist. They already exist.
Absolutely not. If you live in Northern Ireland and you're Irish, you can have an Irish passport, you can shop in Dundalk, you can fly from Dublin. You hardly engage with the British state at all. There is no border. If you drive along those 200 odd miles, you will not see which side of the border you are unless you see the road signs change.
But are you saying that very question of identity takes you straight to violence of the 1970s?
That's not what I said. I said the problem with the issue of identity is it undermines the basis of the Good Friday Agreement. It puts you back into a political crisis when you already have a political crisis. So that's the problem. It undermines the peace agreement we spent 10 years getting and ended 30 years of violence. What the Chief Constable has said in addition to that is, if you start putting a hard border back in, if you start putting installations back in, the dissident Republicans will use that as a target. They will shoot your camera. Whether you put it 10 miles in from the border or at the border, they will shoot it. If you have to then put policemen in to defend those cameras, they will shoot the policemen. Once they've shot the policemen, you have to bring the army back in. Once you have the army, you have the helicopters. Worth remembering that each of the IRA campaigns has started as a border campaign and led to the full-scale violence. Why on earth would you want to start that again?
So the conclusion of what you're saying then, or what you're believing, is that there is no way that Britain can be outside of the EU without risking that border violence.
That is the problem of logic that we've got ourselves into. That if Northern Ireland is outside the single market and outside the customs union, there has to be a hard border. It doesn't matter who builds it, as I say. So the only alternative is for Northern Ireland to be in that backstop, to remain in the single market and remain in the customs union, or for the whole of the United Kingdom to remain in those.
OK, well, a group of you pulled off one of the biggest peace agreements in modern history. You're the negotiator. What would you do at this point?
Well, firstly, I wouldn't refuse to talk to Europeans and say, unless they back down, I'm not even going to engage with them. That is a very silly approach, unless the real intention is to take us into a no-deal Brexit straight away. Maybe that's their intention. So firstly, you need to engage with the Europeans and talk to them about it. But no one so far has found an alternative to the backstop, and I very much doubt they're going to. So you're going to have to find a solution around that backstop, which is what Theresa May was trying to do.
Will it be down the Irish Sea? Would that be your bet?
If we have a no-deal Brexit, there will be a hard border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the Republic. If we have a deal, and if we really are going to go for a Canada Free Trade Agreement where we're not in the single market, not in the customs union, then yes, there'll have to be a border down the Irish Sea. And that is a real problem for the Democratic Unionist Party, which has based itself on the integrity of the union.
Jonathan Powell, thank you. Thanks for coming.